jump points, the gateways between star systems. These wormholes through space bring with them the promise of Star Citizen's expansion beyond just the Stanton system. And at CitizenCon 2949, we got to see the first successful traversal between stellar clusters with our arrival in Pyro. Now, from the branching path design to the volumetric cloud tech encompassing it, from the massive gateway structure itself to the particle eddies the player must navigate within, from the lighting to the VFX and more, to celebrate this milestone, we sat down at the desk of Assistant Art Director GAINEY for a decompressed discussion of all aspects covering the creation of our very first jump point, and to hear from some of the members of the team who worked to bring Star Citizen's first gateway between star systems to life.
We've always known it, we want to do like wormholes and jump points. Some previs was done, I think, back in 2014, 2015. A lot of early concepts went out to Chris. I was working with Marcel on the concept side of things. So we've done a lot of loose investigations first to understand, do we want something big, do we want something that's small, does it fit into the lore of SC? There's several things that you can play with, such as, is it spherical, is it cylindrical, is it square? The very kind of like core shapes that you can kind of play with. And then how that thing would operate, how you'd enter it, what's it look like to the third person as well as the first person. So just to get those ideas out there, and then several iterations for weeks, right? And then we kind of like settled on what you kind of saw in the demo.
So kind of like it's a really good opportunity for me to now show you some of the content live in the editor, maybe run through some of the processes that we went through to build this content, and just speak a little bit about our processes. This is the Stanton location, but it isn't just confined to one area as well. Like, the cool thing is that, I don't know if you noticed from the demo, but we arrived at the edge of a nebula. This is all contained in the same scene, so I can zoom out of this location now. And you can see again, this is fully volumetric, so the approach for this is using the gas cloud tech that's been developed. I mean, it's been developed specifically for the coil, but the more that we've developed with it, the more that we've realised that we can actually start to build entire space scenes with this. And for the persistent universe, obviously, it's less of a linear experience than it is for Squadron 42, because with Squadron 42 we know the exact location that will bring players into these spacescapes, and we'll know how we're going to direct the player into them. When we're building content for the persistent universe, it needs to be a little bit more 360 than that. It needs to be a bit more flexible. So you can see from this gas cloud that we've got here, we can pretty much move it to any position, and we'll still be able to get like a kind of a good feeling from it and a cool vibe. The cool thing is, and something that we've done a lot in Squadron 42 as well, is been able to actually construct these areas with polygons, with the design team, to get exactly what we want represented in the engine. Just to show you a little bit behind the process to building spacescapes like this with this volumetric tech, we do use a little bit of Houdini to kind of generate this content. And I can show you, this is obviously this is a combination of various different elements. We've had a lot of internal tools developed by the VFX tech team, who have built what we call CIG cloud tools. They build the CIG cloud tools to be able to basically turn geometry into gas cloud. So with this kind of like shape that you see here, this has all been built out of geometry, out of my own preference. I've built this in 3ds Max, but really you can build this in Houdini as well. And then we're able to almost sculpt environments with geometry and then turn it into the gas cloud afterwards. So I can just quickly boot up the actual wormhole itself. This is it's a separate scene. Actually, in the game, it's part of an object container, so we stream this in. We've had like a new entity built. I don't know a great deal about the entity. The awesome part of this is as you're traversing through the wormhole, we're actually going into a completely new system. You know, we're not faking anything here. We're actually traveling to a new system, and even myself working on this every single day, that still blows my mind. I'm still kind of completely taken aback by the technology that we're able to kind of bring with this game. We had Ben Parry, who's one of the graphics engineers in the UK, come in and build us a brand new shader.
There's already a shader that the VFX team has used that's mostly for doing kind of like where you would use a particle effect but you don't want to have one, and that's called VFX transparent. So that has a lot of tweakable, slidery kind of things for them to mess around with. So what we actually did was combine that with a more traditional shader that could do lighting and opaque geometry and that kind of thing. And then threw all that in front of Jake, and he picked out which bits he was actually going to use. So then we just deleted out all the bits that we didn't want to use and then started specializing different parts of it to get the kind of details that he wanted out of it.
You just kind of fly through it and you can see some of the kind of variations that we have to the tunnels. And this is all real time in the engine as well. Like we're kind of, again, we're not faking anything here. This is all kind of constructed. And you can see there's lots of kind of cool variations. We built this for the demo. We never actually go down these routes, but conversations that we had with design very early on, with Tobias in design, we were saying, okay, well, we have the capability with the technology that we have to build secondary routes. Do you want them in? And he was like, yeah, cool, put them in. We might not go down them, but we've got them and we can explore them if we need to. So it's good to know that in the future that we'll hopefully have kind of branching paths and the opportunity to go to different locations here. So you can see from here, like the deformation of the surface has, we had vertex deformation in the engine before, but the vertex deformation that we had, the vertex deformation, by the way, is driving the kind of, I suppose, the animation on the surface of this thing. The vertex deformation we had in previous shader work was very uniform, and we couldn't get any variation or displacement to the way that kind of animates on the surface. So something that Ben put into the shader with it for us was the ability to put variation in that deformation so we could get this kind of like otherworldly feel to it. And I think that's something that really helped when it came online. And then we had Caleb, who's the principal VFX artist, come online and build a lot of the local particles that we see in the tunnel as well. And I actually think that really helped give directionality to the tunnel when we felt like we were losing it because of the speed being slowed down. Caleb came in and built these particles that you see here, and I felt that brought a lot of that back, hopefully, just in time for the demo. There is something that kind of tripped us up as well, though, because quite late on, we had some feedback during, I think, a very late playtest.
We received quite a lot of feedback on the first iteration of this thing because we wanted it to feel incredibly fast, which meant I made it incredibly fast. But then you couldn't do 2 straight turns. You couldn't do a 90-degree turn because the character would 100% crash because it liked the speed I had. But we got feedback constantly that it was like, no, I want more turns, I wanted more up and downs, we got a good reference with Space Mountain, and we looked at a lot of YouTube videos on like that, and roller coasters in general, especially with this, like how you build up to this, like when you go up before you get a free fall. So then Jake and we just talked and made changes to his spline, because obviously that modular set was kind of working then, so we could go to Houdini, which he worked in, move the spline around quickly, export it, which was a little bit of work, but then we could get it into game and we could test it again.
So what you can see here on the screen is the tunnel route entirely. So it's from start to finish. The way this began is that Tobias in design would go away and he would construct the tunnel out of what we call designer solids, so simple primitives in the engine, and then we would come in afterwards and use Houdini to generate that into a mesh.
My first point I put in my head that I always kept there was like, it needs to be modular built, so it could use our modular tech that we're already building and we're using for like the rest stops.
So you can see this is obviously the kind of final generated mesh, all of the chambers, and also if I zoom in here as well, you'll see the obstacles. Columns are obstacles. We call them internally the obstacles that you fly between. They're all procedurally generated across the surface of the tunnel as it builds the mesh. And it's all driven by this spline here. So what we've built in the end is we were very, very keen to build a system that we could, generate hundreds of these in the future, or to build more and more of this content, and to also have that flexibility that we needed from design. So, design would come online and say, we want like this part of the tunnel to be 90-degree turn. It's like, it's no problem because you can take the spline here, you can move it around. It takes a little while to generate, but you can see how straight away we've got an entirely new route there, and it's procedurally generated the columns across that route, it's procedurally generated the chambers across that route, so we've got a system, hopefully, that's got a lot of flexibility to it. We need to change anything, we need to build anything, it's all there and it's all possible. And actually, in the end, we had an awful lot of support from both the VFX tech team and also a lot of VFX artists on building the final content. So actually what we delivered was a real team effort for building the wormholes.
So what did we learn this week? We learned that the technologies developed for Squadron 42 can benefit Star Citizen's persistent universe in new and exciting ways, and that jump points are more than just connections between star systems. They aim to test a pilot's mettle as you navigate its eddies and flows, obstacles, and branching paths within. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.